Dear students, in the last class we discussed about Alfred Tennyson. Today we will discuss about Robert Browning as a poet. Robert Browning, like Tennyson, is one of the major poets of Victorian age. We have his poem My Last Duchess in our syllabus. So first of all we will discuss about Robert Browning as a poet. Robert Browning is a prominent poet of the Victorian age. The English poet Robert Browning, he was born in 1812 and he died in 1889, is best known for his dramatic monologue. Robert's father, a senior clerk in the Bank of England, provided a comfortable living for his family and passed on a love of art and literature to Robert. His mother was an excellent pianist, gave him a love of music, while a strong and simple piety provided him with an enduring conviction of the existence of God. In 1828, Browning entered the University of London, but he dropped out after half a year. Browning began to write verses at the age of 6. His first published work was Pauline, a fragment of confession issued anonymously in 1833. The hero of the poem is a young poet, obviously Browning himself, who bears his soul to a patient heroine. When John Mill commented that the anonymous author seemed possessed with a more intense and morbid self-consciousness than I ever knew in any sane human being, Browning resolved never again to reveal his thoughts directly to his readers. Henceforth, he would only make men and women speak. This major step in Browning's poetic development was evident in his next long poem, Paracelsus, in 1835, whose hero was Renaissance alchemist. Though Browning later called the poem a failure, it received favorable reviews and brought about important friendship with the authors William Wordsworth and Thomas Carlyle, and with the actor William C. Macready. Encouraged by these friendships, Browning began to emerge in the London social scene. Encouraged by Macready, Browning turned to write drama, but his first play, Strafford, 1837, closed after only 5 performances. During the next 10 years, he wrote 6 other plays, none of which were successfully produced. All of Browning's plays are marked by overemphasis of character analysis and lack of dramatic action. In 1838, Browning traveled to northern Italy to acquire first-hand knowledge of its setting and atmosphere for his next long poem. But the publication of Sordello in 1840 was a disaster which dealt Browning's growing reputation a severe blow. Critics unanimously declare the poem totally obscure and unreadable, and modern readers still find it difficult. Robert met Elizabeth Barrett in London in 1845. They started corresponding and gradually discovered their love for each other. Elizabeth Barrett gave wings to his poetic imagination. The couple finally tied the knot on the 12th of September in 1846. Initially, they kept their marriage a secret because Barrett's father disliked Robert. Then they went to Italy. There they spent the remaining years until Elizabeth's death. Robert Browning is a great Victorian poet and playwright who started writing at an early age. He became a published poet in 1833 when his first poem, Pauline, a fragment of confession, was published. It received modest reviews, but it introduced him as a poet in a literary cycle. This piece was attacked by John Mill, who condemned his sophisticated approach of writing. However, Robert never gave up and kept on polishing his abilities. Later in 1935, he produced Paracelsus, followed by another piece, Sordello, in 1940. Besides poetry, he tried his skills in playwriting and presented Strafford in 1837 and Bells and Pomegranate in 1841. Unfortunately, these attempts did not bring the desired success. Robert was disheartened and continued writing poetry when in 1855 his wife inspired him to publish his collections. Later, this brought commercial and critical success in his writing career. In 1869, His dramatic persona and Ring and the Book earned him a spot in the circle of Victorian poets. His style. Robert had established his career first as a poet and then as a playwright. His unique ideas added a lot to the literary world. His works won global recognition marked by elusive imagery, symbolic structure, dramatic monologue, a blend of dark humor and irony. His early works, Pauline and Porcelasius, brought him to the center of criticism, and his later masterpieces earned him a reputable place among literary circles. Robert successfully used dramatic monologue technique, which enabled the reader to see an event using the character's lenses. Moreover, he explored the beauty of the real world using artistic techniques in his poems. Fra Lippo Lippi and Picture Igneous. The recurring theme in most of the poem are loss, love, the relationship between arts and mortality, politics, religion, and society. Browning's impact on literature. Robert Browning's literary ideas have left deep imprints on English as well as international literature. His distinctive writing approach and unique way of expression made him stand among the best Victorian poets. His thoughtful ideas influenced many great poets and writers, included Robert Frost, Ezra Pound, and T.S. Eliot. He successfully documented his ideas and feelings in his writing that even today writers try to imitate his unique style, considering him a beacon of writing plays and poetry. Robert Browning's is remembered for his dramatic monologue. So first of all, we will discuss what is dramatic monologue. Browning experimented with and perfected the dramatic monologue in the long poem Pippa Passes in 1841 and two collection of shorter poems, Dramatic Lyrics, in 1842 and Dramatic Romances and Lyrics 1845. The dramatic monologue is basically the speech of a single character in a moment of some dramatic significance. In the course of his monologue, the speaker reveals what this situation is, as well as the setting of the situation and to whom he is speaking. Of greatest interest, however, is what he reveals about his own motives and personality. Often the speaker, while trying to justify himself to his listeners, actually reveals the faults or even depravity of his character to the reader. Such poems as My Last Duchess, Soliloquy of the Spanish Cloister, and The Bishop Orders His Tomb, in which his ironic revelation is fully developed, give the reader the pleasure of discovering more about the speaker than he perceives about himself. It is usually written in blank verse. In 1855, Browning published Man and Women, a collection of 51 poems, though the volume contained many of the dramatic monologues that are best known and loved by modern readers. It was not popular with Browning's contemporaries. In 1864, he published Dramatic Persona, though some of the dramatic monologue in the collection are complex and difficult or overlong. This was the first of Browning's work to be popular with the general reading public. His popularity increased with the publication of The Ring and the Book in 1868 to 1869. This long poem is based on a murder and subsequent trial in Rome in 1698. Ring and the Book were enthusiastically received by the public, and Browning became a prominent figure in London society. He was a frequent guest at dinners, concerts, and receptions. In the next 10 years, Browning wrote with great energy, publishing a volume almost every year. Browning's poetic reputation by 1870 had achieved equal status with Tennyson. The energy and roughness of Browning's poetry, however, contrast sharply with the melancholy and the polish of Tennyson's. Browning died in Venice on December 12, 1889. He was buried in Westminster Abbey. After gaining a reputation among British literary canons, Robert Browning breathed his last in Venice, and on the same day the final volume of his book, Esselander, hit the shelves. Sadly, he was not there to witness its glory. So, Robert Browning was one of the major poets of Victorian age, and he was famous for his dramatic monologue. In the next class, we will discuss about his poem, My Last Duchess, which is very famous for being a wonderful work of dramatic monologue. Thank you.